Welcome into the 49ers Report by Chat Sports. I'm Chase Senior. Coming your way on today's show, we're going to take a look at the top remaining NFL free agents. And of course, San Francisco has been somewhat silent on the free agency front. The lone splash that they made, Charvarius Ward, the cornerback, coming to the Bay from Kansas City. Other than that, some moves made on the peripheries of this roster, but there are still some marquee names left on the free agency market. So on today's show, we're taking a look at the top 5 players at each position outside of defensive back, where we do our due diligence. We do it for the people and take a look at the top 10 defensive backs. So let's first take a look at the top remaining free agent quarterbacks. Now, obviously, the big domino that has to fall is Jimmy Garoppolo. We'll see what happens on that front. If he gets cut, if he gets traded away, is Nate Sudfeld going to be the backup quarterback for Trey Lance? We'll see about that. And if that's the case, and Garoppolo is no longer on this football team, does San Francisco look the route of a Ryan Fitzpatrick, an A.J. McCarron, a Blaine Gabbert, Cam Newton, or Mike Glennon? Cam Newton in the headlines today because according to ESPN's Adam Schefter, still wants to play. Some teams have reached out to him about potentially being a starter, but I think that's more so to increase his market value because which teams out there want Cam Newton as a starting quarterback? I don't think there are any. I think he's washed at this point. Maybe in a couple of plays he can come in after backing up Trey Lance and run the football, but as a starter long-term, I don't think he can really play any longer. He's never been a big completion percentage guy, but as a veteran to Trey Lance, maybe it would make sense for San Francisco, but it seems as though they really like Nate Sudfeld and maybe even Jimmy Garoppolo as the backup quarterback. As for Jimmy G, Kyle Shanahan did speak today at the NFL owners meetings in Florida. It was bright and early. My man was looking tired. He started speaking to the media around 8 o'clock in the morning Eastern, which is 5 a.m. Pacific. The Jimmy G domino has to fall first in order for the Niners to figure out their backup quarterback situation. Once that gets figured out, then maybe the Niners will make a signing elsewhere or restructure the contract for Jimmy G because a $26 million cap hit for a backup quarterback, that, folks, ain't it. We shift to the top remaining running backs, and I think the Niners are pretty good in this area with a couple of the young studs on this roster, but there are some really good names left available. Melvin Gordon of the Denver Broncos, Sony Michel of the Los Angeles Rams, Marlon Mack as a dual-threat running back is a really good player still at this point. We know about Jerick McKinnon, a rebound season for him last year with the Kansas City Chiefs, another one of those dual-threat backs, and then David Johnson. What a free fall it's been for him. Couple of years there for Arizona, looked to be one of the best running backs in the game. Then he started to tail off, gets traded to the Houston Texans in the last couple of years. He really hasn't done much. As for the running back room for the Niners, Trey Sermon looks great in offseason workouts. He's been working with Dalvin Cook, Devin Singletary. He's been putting in that grind, and I think he can be a really good backup to Elijah Mitchell, and at points can even start if Elijah Mitchell were to be out or if Elijah Mitchell struggles. It became clear to me last year that the Niners were moving forward with a youth movement at that running back spot because they used draft picks on Trey Sermon in the 3rd round, then later on in the draft for Elijah Mitchell, and they decided to not retain Raheem Mostert. So I think Kyle Shanahan very comfortable with the duo of Elijah Mitchell and Trey Sermon. I do not expect San Francisco to sign any of those free agents who we talked about. We're going to continue to break down this list. First, I want you to get into the comments section and give me a name. Your favorite remaining free agent target. It can be those guys that we've talked about already, or some of the players who we've yet to break down, and some players who maybe we don't even get to. Either way, let me know in the comments section, and make sure you subscribe to the channel, because when the Niners make a signing, when breaking news happens, when there's a big report out there, when there's a juicy rumor, we cover it all right here on the San Francisco 49ers Report by Chat Sports as we approach 60,000 subs. Join the faithful family by hitting that red subscribe button down below or go to youtube.com/49erstv. Probably the most star power remaining, it's at the wide receiver position. Look at the names on this list to my right. Odell Beckham Jr. coming off the torn ACL. Is Jarvis Landry going to go back to Cleveland now that they traded for Deshaun Watson? Maybe. Julio Jones, one of Kyle Shanahan's favorite all-time players, put up massive numbers in 2015 and 2016, best 2 seasons of his career when Kyle Shanahan was his OC. He's also a scheme fit as that ex-wide receiver. Cole Beasley, really good slot, but you have Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel for that. Emmanuel Sanders, maybe a vertical threat, a possession type of wide receiver as a veteran coming back to the Bay. I'd probably say no because the Niners are keeping it youthful in terms of their roster right now. As for Julio Jones, he's probably one of the more sexy names on this list because he's a bona fide Hall of Famer, but the last couple of years, the production has gone down and the injuries have gone up. He is a system fit, and when you put him alongside Deebo Samuel, as well as Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle, I think he'd be able to really put forward a lot of production. But I'd like to see the Niners bring in a big-bodied wide receiver. Could that be Jawan Jennings? Could he continue to grow as a former late-round pick out of Tennessee? He was excellent last year. You take a look at the numbers, 24 catches, 282 yards, and 5 touchdowns. You're like, that's not crazy production. But on the money downs, third downs, and fourth downs, he was terrific, especially in the clutch, and I'd like to see that continued growth. Could he be that big-bodied wide receiver in the red zone who the Niners have been bereft of in years past? Maybe. And I kind of like that movement because he's really, really affordable. Pick a wide receiver 3 for this Niners offense. I might go with Jawan Jennings. Are you going to go with a player like Julio Jones? Even though he's a little bit older, once again, do it right now and get those names in the comment section down below. Now, over the last couple of weeks, we've been telling you about the fine folks at Rumble, a brand new partner here at Chat Sports and on the 49ers Report. And we continue to grow like crazy here on YouTube as well as on Rumble. But we have some work to do. Chicago Bears now crushing us in terms of subscribers, more than 130 subscribers than the 49ers Report. So this is what I want you to do right now. Go to rumble.com/49erstv and show me that you love what we're doing here on the Niners Report and hit that green subscribe button on the Rumble app. Uncensored content, exclusive content on that side of things. Do it right now, and I appreciate it in advance. Top remaining tight end free agents. Now, I think the Niners are out of this equation because they're bringing back Ross Dwelley on a one-year contract. Rob Gronkowski, Jared Cook, Eric Ebron, Kyle Rudolph, Anthony Ferkser. I think among this group, Eric Ebron may be the most underrated. Rob Gronkowski, the future Hall of Famer. But I think the Niners are also set at that tight end position. And what's the common theme here? The Niners haven't made a lot of moves because they're content with the current construction of their roster. As far as Ross Dwelley goes, not a big pass catcher. 4 catches, 51 yards. Kyle Shanahan really doesn't use a lot of 12 personnel with 2 tight end sets. I'd frankly like to see more of that with Trey Lance because I think it makes the offense a little bit less predictable, but Ross Dwelley is a special teamer, as a guy who can block and occasionally catch some footballs, is going to be one of the backup tight ends for George Kittle this upcoming season. Top remaining free agents along the offensive line. Some good ones and some big names. I'm really surprised that J.C. Tretter, head of the NFL Players Association, hasn't linked up with the team just yet. Riley Reiff of Cincinnati, the Bengals have totally rebuilt that offensive line for Joe Burrow, and I love what they've done because of his first 2 years in the NFL, he's been beaten and battered like crazy. Reiff might be on his way out. Darrell Williams, Bobby Massey, David Quessenberry. I'm not sure they figured to be starters, and I wouldn't want the Niners to take a chance on any of those guys. Right now, a lot of those marquee free agents along the offensive line are with other teams because that's a position of importance for all 32 teams in the National Football League. An injury update along the offensive line for San Francisco, Mike McGlinchey. And along the defensive line for San Francisco, Javon Kinlaw. Kyle Shanahan saying on Tuesday they've been working out at the facility in Santa Clara. McGlinchey coming off the torn quad, Javon Kinlaw coming off ACL surgery. If they return to form and they play elite football in 2022, it'll do wonders for the Niners in their chances of trying to make another deep playoff run. Along the defensive line, Niners have stars like Nick Bosa. They have a really good player in Eric Armstead. They're bringing back a couple of other players. But could they make a big splash and go after Jadeveon Clowney? Not sure he's a scheme fit because a lot throughout his NFL career is figured more so as a 3-4 lineman and a linebacker, but he can really get after the quarterback. Had 9 sacks last year, opposite of Myles Garrett, playing a lot in a 4-3 scheme. Can you imagine what he'd be able to do opposite of Nick Bosa? I just think he's out of the Niners' price range. Trey Flowers, Melvin Ingram, Justin Houston, Jerry Hughes, those 2 through 4 players, they're older in age, there's no question about it, and San Francisco has really prioritized younger players. Now, Clowney's been in the league for a long time, but playing on the other side of Nick Bosa, I think would allow him to have a season like he did this past year in Cleveland when he racked up 9 sacks playing alongside Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett, Nick Bosa, 2 of the best edge rushers in the NFL. At the defensive tackle spot, you lose DJ Jones, you bring in Hassan Ridgeway. Eric Armstead is gonna consistently play defensive tackle after he was kind of a failed edge rusher, and I really like what he was able to do. I think you're gonna lose Arden Key, who played a lot in the interior for you. So do you go a route of going with Calais Campbell, Akeem Hicks, Sheldon Richardson, Larry Ogunjobi signed a monster deal with the Chicago Bears before failing his physical. A lot of red flags there. Linval Joseph, formerly of the Los Angeles Chargers, is out there as well. Top remaining free agents at the linebacker spot. A lot of buzz about Bobby Wagner maybe going to the Rams or going to the Baltimore Ravens. It looks as though the Baltimore Ravens have been able to close the gap on Bobby Wagner. He is demanding a one-year contract worth in the neighborhood of $11 million. And I can tell you right now, because San Francisco's paying so much money to a player like Fred Warner, and they have other really good linebackers on this team, they're not going to pay Bobby Wagner that much money. Now, other players, Kyle Van Noy, championship-level pedigree, high football IQ. I'd like him on the cheap as a depth piece. Alexander Johnson, Jamie Collins, and Dante Howard, some really good name power there. Good players, but I don't think the Niners go that route either. Why is that? Because the 49ers have one of the best linebacking cores in the National Football League. All-Pro Fred Warner, one of the best in the game at his craft, and he's still only in his mid-20s. When Dre Greenlaw is able to stay healthy, he's a fantastic player. And so many times last year, the Niners defense needed a big play, and Azeez Al-Shire was really able to come through with some monster splash plays last year for this Niners defense, whether he was punching out the football and forcing a fumble, picking off passes. He was terrific, and that combination of players on this Niners defense is absolutely fantastic. Right now, with the moves that the Niners have made up to this point and the moves that still need to be made, grade the Niners roster for me in the comment section. A, B, C, D, or F. How good do you think this team is right now? You let me know and be the judge in the comment section. Wide receiver, a lot of big names there. Also at cornerback too, because at wide receiver, you were looking at guys like OBJ, Jarvis Landry, Julio Jones. How about these names at the cornerback position, which is still, in my opinion, a position of need for the 49ers? Stephon Gilmore is still out there miraculously. I think he's waiting on a big offer that he hasn't landed yet. Steven Nelson, if you can sign him to like a 2-year, $7 million contract, $3.5 million per year, I'd like that. He played good for the Philadelphia Eagles last year. Chris Harris certainly has pedigree. So too does Kevin King. Kyle Fuller had a bounce-back year after getting off to a rough start with Denver to start that year. And then you take a look at these 6 through 10 spots. Hey, a reunion with Jason Verrett, could that come to fruition? Xavier Rhodes, too old for me. So too is Patrick Peterson. Jack Rabbit, Janoris Jenkins was pretty solid for Tennessee last year. So too was Bryce Callahan with Denver throughout his career. But are we down for a Jason Verrett return? That's really what I want to focus on here. Can you get him back for like a couple of $1 million coming off yet another torn ACL? And if he goes down again, let's hope that isn't the case, but if he goes down again, you have some insurance. I like the makeup of this Niners secondary right now with Charvarius Ward, Emmanuel Mosley, Ambry Thomas, Diamador Lenore. You bring back Jason Verrett, who when healthy is a very, very good player, and 2 years ago was awesome for San Francisco. If you get him back for a bargain cheap deal, I might be a fan of that if I'm John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. Lastly, top remaining free agents at the safety spot. A lot of name power here too. Tyrann Mathieu, Indianapolis, plus 500 odds to land him. Steelers have been in the mix. So too have the Las Vegas Raiders. All of the chatter on the Niners front has been somewhat silent because I think Mathieu, he's going to seek a deal between, let's say, $12 to $16 million per year. Niners won't pay that. Landon Collins, Rodney McLeod, Jason McCourty, also out there on the open market. So too is one of the Niners' own players in Jaquiski Tartt. Now, I thought that he was going to be sought after more so than he's been up to this point in free agency, but Jaquiski Tartt for the right price, I'm down. Let's go. Everybody wants to focus on that dropped interception in the NFC Championship game, which could have vaulted very well the Niners to the Super Bowl. But last year, he had the best year of his career. And if you can bring him in for $4 or $5 million per year, I think that's a really good contract. We're still waiting to see if Jimmy Ward is going to be extended. But last year, I thought Jimmy Ward, Jaquiski Tartt, one of the best safety tandems in the National Football League. Let's run it back because they were good in that back end. And I think the Niners right now are better at cornerback than they were to start last year with the acquisition of Charvarius Ward. So I asked you about the Niners roster a little bit ago. How about this team competing for a Super Bowl? Are they good enough? What say you? Type G for good enough, L for lackluster. Once again, we love hearing from the audience. Treat the comment section like a Sports Talk Radio call-in line, because here on YouTube, it's basically that, and let me know down below.